So I think we might as well get started here. I think a few other folks will join, but I'll just watch the participants tab and bump them up to be panelists so they can chat with us. So just a couple of things to go over. We generally record these and share them after the fact so that folks can watch them if they can't make it tonight. If you would prefer not to be recorded and not to have your face on here, you're welcome to turn off your video. Also, you can just send me a message or send me an email, and I can we can deal with that after the fact. Yeah, if you'd rather not be on the video, that's totally fine as well. So like all Code for America spaces and events, we have a code of conduct. I will put the link to that in the chat if you have not seen it yet. If you have done anything with the Brigade or with Code for America, you have probably seen it, but it basically means that this is a respectful and welcoming space for everybody. And we also try to make sure that we are leaving room for folks to speak who aren't being heard or aren't speaking as much. So be nice to each other and be welcoming to each other, and we'll be fine. I will also post a link to a notes doc that I just started. I'll try to take some notes, and anybody who would like to is welcome to join in as well. We usually share this as well, just in case there's any like resources or links or anything that people want to check out after the fact. With that, I will let our guest host introduce himself. Alex, do you want to
Sure thing.
Tell us about yourself?
Yeah, and Will, do you mind just turning on the screen share real quick? Because I have
yes.
I just had a few. Yeah, I guess my plan was, we're a small group, so we can keep it chill. I did have a few slides. I'm happy to talk about, a little bit of like who I am, or how I got here, a little bit about Mapbox, where Mapbox kind of came from, which is, I think, part of the fun of the story of, and then what we do now. And I know at least a few of you know the story. I see Min on here. And then show a few projects that we've worked on. And then, we've got I think at least one or two folks to talk about projects that they've built using our stuff from the Brigade. But yeah, if there's anything anyone wants us to cover or things we want to talk about, please just jump in. Does that make sense? Is there anything I'm leaving out that folks want to make sure we chat about? I guess we can get there. All right, cool. Let me throw this guy on. Let's see. Let me know if you can see the slide. Did that work?
Looks good. Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so my name is Alex Yule. I'm on the Mapbox community team. We're a funky group of map makers who, our job is to kind of help Mapbox, both the staff and the customers, use the tools for social impact projects, for nonprofit, and that shows that we do that in a lot of different ways, from working with partners to enabling people to do volunteering, donation matching, all that kind of stuff. I'm an engineer on the team, or solutions architect. I've been at Mapbox almost 4 years now. Before Mapbox, my background is I was like a geographer, I guess. Taught myself how to code, do web mapping stuff. Worked at Esri for a couple of years, and then I came to CFA in 2012 as part of the second class of fellows. That's us in the bottom right with Jen and everyone in the old office. I was a fellow in Philadelphia. Our project was to build a text messaging platform to enable the citizens of Philadelphia, the residents of Philadelphia, to participate in the civic process, even if they didn't have an internet connection necessarily, or the time or the ability to show up at a public meeting. And we launched in Philly, and then a bunch of other cities heard about it and wanted it. So we relaunched, and then we ended up getting some money from the Knight Foundation to spin it off as a startup. So TexasIn became a company. I never managed to really get maps shoved in there. I tried a bunch of times, but my user-centric co-founders were not super, they were like, we're putting this in, admit it, like you want the maps for you, not for the customers. I was like, okay, fine. But it was a fun few years. We launched in, I don't know, maybe 30 cities. We ended up getting acquired by Gov Delivery in about 2015 or so and became their interactive texting product. And they ended up getting acquired and merged with Granicus. So the product still exists. I guess it's been whatever, 9 years now. It's kind of crazy. It was a fun experience. And then, but at the end of the day, I've always been a mapping person. I really appreciated the power of geography and that spatial dimension to kind of unify things and put things in perspective. And so, yeah, I joined Mapbox right after that in I guess it was 17 now, as a sales engineer and then a solution architect. And then last year I moved over to the community team. Yeah, it's been a fun ride. I think for me, part of the reason I end up at Mapbox is because it's a pretty unique company. It actually it started as a nonprofit, really. If you've ever heard of Development Seed, the nonprofit section of sort of heart of Mapbox still exists. So the first Mapbox map, this is a picture of Eric in Afghanistan in 2001, was actually a map of the Afghan election results. So this is the first Mapbox map. And so they realized when they were building these, they had to build these maps for, I forget who the original customer was, it's USAID or someone, but there weren't really a good set of open source mapping tools. So they built the original version of Mapbox. And then as they built it, they realized maybe there'd be a market for this they could subsidize their work for customers like this by selling it to companies. And so, since the beginning, there's always been a community team at Mapbox. It started off as that, and then the rest of the company kind of built around it. And for a company our size, the fact that we have a community team still, or at all, is pretty amazing, and that it's as big as it is, and we do as much as we do. So that's part of the reason why I came to Mapbox. I'm excited to be on that team now myself. These days, the product has evolved a lot. From like a simple Slippy map to like really a full mapping platform. At its heart, there's this kind of AI map layer that's a living map that learns from its users' usage to become better. At its heart, there's OpenStreetMap. There's like corrections that get applied to that. We fix problems with the roads as people drive. And at the end of the day, it's driven by both the data and the developers who use it. It's grown a lot. We have 650 million active users these days, which is pretty crazy. A ton of developers, a lot of people using it, a lot of big names. I think lately the biggest kind of most exciting different use case of Mapbox that makes it different from just like a web map is that it's actually being used in cars, which is cool. So you can build a map in Mapbox and have it look and behave the same way across a lot of different devices, whether they're mobile phones or cars or whatever. So, for me, that's exciting just to see how this thing has grown from what was essentially a nonprofit to a mapping platform that a lot of folks can use for a lot of different things. So our team, the community team, we support nonprofits, educational institutions, anything that's considered kind of positive impact. We have a pretty broad latitude to kind of define what that is. And we do that in a lot of different ways, whether it's supporting the partners with coupons or funding or technical guidance. That's a lot of what I do, is helping our more technical, like partners with weird, thorny technical problems, figure out how to implement. Sometimes I'll be actually writing code, sometimes just giving them guidance. These are a few projects that we've worked on the last few months that have been a little bit more top of mind. A lot of COVID stuff. I think there were 270 different COVID maps that came through using Mapbox during the pandemic. This is one of the most popular ones. It was Health Map. This was came out of Harvard and Boston Children's Hospital, showing the impact of the pandemic across the world. They also worked on a tool called Vaccine Finder, which I believe became, I'm not entirely sure how closely related they were, but it became vaccines.gov, which launched, I guess, about a month ago now. And this one was actually pushed out it was done in collaboration with the White House and promoted by the president. He mentioned it. So we were all, Megan, especially on my team, was working to make sure this was all up and running before he announced it. So those are a few fun projects. This is another one that I worked on. This was actually before I joined the community team. Amazon Frontlines is an organization that works with indigenous groups. They're actually based in Ecuador, and they work with a confederation of tribes at the local level to build capacity and help them defend their land rights, establish and defend their land rights. And they partner with another organization called Digital Democracy, who build a set of decentralized mapping tools. And so folks in the Amazon can basically go out with a smartphone, capture waypoints, and then using a decentralized, like blockchain-based storage system, sync up with other devices, get them back to their home base, upload them, and then build these maps to both tell the story to the public of what's happening down there, as well as to create these larger print maps to use in court. So I got to go down there in April, I want to say last year, but last year before the pandemic. So, whatever that means, 2019. And I was there when they won their first, it was basically the first victory in a court for an indigenous group in Ecuador in like since the 40s, I think. And they had used these maps that they built to prove to the government that they had like indigenous sovereignty over a certain area of land that the government had sold to oil companies. And so they invalidated all of these oil leases using these maps. It was pretty amazing. So I got to be there when they won the case and do some training workshops showing folks how to use QGIS and other open source mapping tools. So that was pretty cool. The guy up there on the top right, his name is Opie. He's kind of one of the younger leaders who's both like a leader of the social leader. Like he leads protests and he does a lot of the advocacy work, but he also learns the tools so that he can understand where the data is coming from. And it's all about capacity building down there. Like we're not building maps for them. We're helping them learn how to do it so that they have the skills to use the tools however works best for them. So that was a really cool project that I got to work on. This is another one we're working on right now with UNICEF, mapping out connectivity in rural areas to try to advocate for connecting schools up to the internet, because there's a lot of folks who use schools as their local like internet hub. So this is kind of an earlier stage project where we're building out a spatial model using isochrones, drive time isochrones, and intersecting those with other spatial layers to tell these stories. So that's been fun. And then here's just a few others, maps for action and response. This is with Catholic Charities USA. Eviction Lab, which is looking at mapping evictions across the country. Explorer.land, which is all about forest restoration and like how do you track reforestation projects so that you can verify that carbon credits that are being sold are actually like what's actually happening on the ground is what's supposed to be happening. Conservation. And then there's one other kind of interesting aspect other than working directly with partners that we do, which is sort of like what I used to do as a solution architect, which is we look at patterns of problems that emerge and we try to build these really easy to use tools, kind of code templates that anyone can go and grab. We call them impact tools. Our most popular one is probably, well, there's two. One is the scrollytelling map, which you saw briefly there in the UNICEF one, which is basically like a Washington Post style, as you scroll, the map zooms around kind of template. And then this other one is Sheet Mapper, which allows you to just really quickly throw together an interactive map driven by a Google spreadsheet. So you don't actually need a database or any GeoJSON or anything. You can just put your data in Google Sheets and then you get a map that's interactive and has pop-ups and stuff. So trying to lower the barrier to entry, especially for nonprofits and teams that don't have a lot of engineering capacity, to be able to still produce tools that get their data out there. These are a few of the examples of things people have built with Sheet Mapper. It's pretty cool. Everything from COVID actions to Cartografía das Memorias, which is all about folks that disappeared during armed conflict. It's really a powerful tool, a powerful map. So yeah, that's our story. It's pretty much all I've got. Happy to take questions if folks have them, or we can jump into the presentation of the Brigade projects. We're always open if people have questions or need help with anything, whether it's CFA related or outside. These are just a few of the things we do. There you go.
This is really cool. Thank you, Alex. It's like a huge range of different applications and different things you do with this. Yeah, that's awesome. Do folks have questions or comments or anything like that for Alex before we move on? If not, maybe we can jump into the plug along project with Brian and Eva.
Hi everyone, I am Eva from Plug Along, and looks like Brian has just shared Plug Along, so you might want to pin that so that you can see it at in full screen. So I'll give you kind of a quick overview of what plugging is, where Plug Along came from, and then I'll talk you through how we use mapping, and then Brian can tell you a little bit more about the technologies that we're using. So plugging is a trend that came out of Sweden a few years ago, of people who started jogging and picking up trash to clean up their neighborhoods. Since then, it's kind of expanded to, you don't have to be a jogger or a runner to be a plugger. You can pretty much do whatever you're doing as part of your daily activities, the key being that you're kind of on the lookout for trash as you're hiking or exercising or just walking around. So what Plug Along does is it allows you to track your plugs, your plugging history, to share your history with your neighbors, and also to earn what we call plugging minutes, and also different types of achievements. Eventually, we're hoping to connect the plugging minutes to some kind of real world reward, but we're not there yet. So in terms of, Brian, if you'd come back to the plug page and scroll down. So obviously you can track your the location of your plug. We made the decision not to track the whole path that the user takes, but rather focus on what they're actually picking up. So people can take pictures of what they're picking up, or maybe they're the beautiful park that's now clean after they've gone through and plugged it. And we offer some kind of hopefully engaging features where we let people show what they were doing, and we go a little bit overboard perhaps, to the point where you can actually be horseback riding. And the other day I actually was on Instagram and I did find a picture of somebody plugging on a horse. So it's real. People do all kinds of things. We also let people track kind of the detailed options that of stuff that they've plugged. Brian, can you expand that detailed item? So we kind of take it beyond just regular trash. We actually have a dog poop option. Since lots of people plug with their dogs, including myself. The idea here is really to engage with people who are already doing this. There are actually people who are kind of serious pluggers and seriously into doing this as a pretty regular thing, but also maybe to reach people who might, let's say, do some kind of volunteer trash pickup or something like Love Your Block, etc. It's taken us a couple of years at Code for Boston to actually build this, but it is now available both for iOS and Android finally. So we're pretty excited about that, and we're now working on marketing and user acquisition. Brian, can you go back to the local tab for a second? Yeah, so to just give you an idea of like what you're basically looking at a feed of your blogs and maybe other users' blogs. There's one of my beautiful dogs plugging with me. And eventually, hopefully, once we have more users, we will have people will be able to like each other's blogs, kind of make more of a connection, and maybe even follow their fellow bloggers nearby. That's kind of it in a nutshell. We use the maps really kind of upfront to track the location, and then show the location that the user chose to record their blog. So you can actually like drag the map and change your location if you've moved. But the general idea is like, okay, you are in a park. It doesn't need to be that exact. What else? Maybe go to the achievements. Yeah, so we try to introduce a little bit more fun and gamification with some of the achievements, where some of these are location based. So if like you're the first blogger in your neighborhood, you get an achievement. Others are more things that are time-based. So let's say like if you blogged your first blog of the spring, you might get an achievement. And also then there are some fun ones where you blog with your cat and you get an achievement and things like that. And that's the kind of functionality in a nutshell. I am the user experience person on the project, and Brian is the tech lead. So I will let him talk about the technical background. You're muted, Brian. We still can't hear you.
Looks like there's maybe it's like a snap camera or something. There's a funny chrome up.
Yeah.
I can hear you now. Oh, no, not anymore.
No?
Oh, yes.
We heard that.
I'll actually switch to the other mic. I'll synchronized. But,
there we go. That should work. Hello, hello. Yeah, so we took a slightly different approach to how we organized our hack nights with this and how we built it. We tried to do it by doing mob or ensemble programming. I don't know how many people are familiar with that, but the basic principle there is that we actually all look at a shared screen, and we take a particular task or set of tasks during each hack night, and we make progress by kind of circulating responsibilities. It's a way of engaging people. It's also a way of teaching people, getting people up to speed with how the code is structured, and also kind of giving people direct hands-on experience with actually, mutating software and realizing that, things sometimes, you sometimes go down blind alleyways and have to rethink things. Architecturally, I'll just say briefly, it's React Native, which matches well, I think, with the skill set of a lot of people who are coming to Hack Nights, and it has made it pretty straightforward to develop for iOS and for Android. There were a few issues that we had to, a few differences in the platforms that we had to deal with, but quite few, relatively speaking. And then the back end is all on Firebase. I don't know if anyone has any additional technical questions, but happy to answer them.
What was the hardest part about building it out? And I guess were there any like unique challenges to the spatial side of things, or was it pretty easy to once you got things going?
I think probably the biggest challenge was project management, which is a kind of a perpetual issue when you're working asynchronously and once a week or a couple times a week, and coordinating on that same schedule for the most part. That always presents a challenge, especially when there is a certain amount of design decision making that has to happen. So the major part of that I would say would be how to deal with Firebase, basically how to model things in a way that makes sense. And yeah, basically doing a NoSQL style backend presented some interesting challenges, I think. But yeah, coordination. Coordination is always the biggest part.
Yeah, I mean, we had some issues with on Android with the camera and camera roll access.
That's true.
But that was really the only kind of cross-platform thing.
How did you choose the Mapbox for the mapping on this, as opposed to Google Maps or whatever native thing might be on the devices?
We're actually not using Mapbox. I don't know we're just using whatever the platform native mapping solution is. I mean, I've used Mapbox in other projects, and I do like Mapbox. I'm not paid to say that it's true. I do like it, but it made sense for this to just use the native platform APIs.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we work with a lot of folks who will use Mapbox for the web stuff, and then they'll use native for mobile because it's often free, which is not a bad way to do it at all. Totally.
Well, I have just learned that my Cub Scout troop was big into plugging in the mid-90s, but we just didn't know what to call it. I mean, without the running part, but walking around, I guess.
Is it a thing if it doesn't have a name?
I think it's retroactively a thing. It wasn't a thing until like Americans learned what Swedish people did.
So you could say that you were plogging before it was cool.
That's right.
I plan to say
used
exactly
to call
that.
it picking up trash.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same ring to it.
Do you have to be jogging while you do it, or can you do it at any speed?
You can do it at any speed. I don't run unless I'm being chased. So, but there are people who will actually run. It's nice to have the trick is really to carry one of those grabbers, so you can kind of like, you don't have to touch the trash.
In Vermont, we have a tradition, which we have been doing for 51 years, called Green Up Day. And one day every spring, first day of May, or first Saturday of May, all Vermonters, well, many Vermonters, I think 25,000 Vermonters go outside and pick up the trash along the roads and in the public spaces. And it's like a one-day thing. And so my brigade built a mobile app, React Native, Firebase, for that purpose. It has mapping and all of that stuff. The thing is that finally they've got new leadership at the Green Up organization, which is a nonprofit, of course, with like one person who leads it. And they're finally thinking, well, we should be doing it year round. And we're like, duh. But it's not an app that we really want to maintain for a super long period of time. So I'm like looking at this thinking, maybe I can just get them to go adopt blogging as the solution, and then we can like retire the thing that we built, and it can be the blog along thing instead. So
sounds good to me.
that may work well. I think the biggest thing that they would do on Green Up Day is they would do team organizing. So, you know, people would organize a team of people to go pick up a certain road or certain park or certain thing, and that may still be a factor. But well, I'll be bringing this to the Green Up, the director of Green Up, on our next meeting, so we can consider this concept.
Cool.
That's exactly what these things are for. We've made a cross brigade connection there. I'm curious. So you said that you're moving more into like marketing and user acquisition. What's your user base like now, and do you have a sense of like how big the blogging community is? Like, are bloggers using this, or is this creating new bloggers?
I can't really answer that because we literally got the Android out. Like, when did we actually fix this? Not long ago. And I am like Jess. I just created our Instagram account, and I'm just starting to really kick that marketing into gear until we actually had, you know, cross-platform apps. I didn't want to be out there and promoting something that didn't really exist or didn't work that well. So we'll see. I mean, usually what happens is that obviously people who are already doing something are the early adopters. But, you know, I think, you know, it has potential because a lot of people do exercise regularly and they are out there, and a lot of people are bothered by trash. So no, maybe we can give them a little push. But yeah, it's gonna be a learning experience. We need to go viral somehow. Anyone has ideas.
Do other folks have questions for the blog along team? I can also I know other folks weren't like officially scheduled to present, but I would love to hear from anybody else who's on the call what you're working on. Not just if it's mapping, but I'm just curious as to what other projects folks have going on.
If no one else has something, I can share what Code for San Jose's been up to. Apologize to Alex and Dom, you might have heard of it already, because I tend to be a bit of a broken record promoting Code for San Jose's projects.
Go for it.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of a somber kind of mood. I think going to be a bit of summer mood in Code for San Jose for a little while because of what's happened recently. But you know, we are always trying to you know, be part of the community and really help community pick back up and be resilient. And so it's more a reminder of what we need to do day in, day out. So kind of along those lines, if I can share my screen real quick. One of the mapping related things that we have been doing has been related to, related to this theme of resiliency. So we have a project, an ongoing project in Code for San Jose about maintaining OpenStreetMap in our corner of the south, our corner of the Bay Area, and that's like a number of different things. We are adding more detail to the map. We are cleaning up vandalism. We're onboarding new people to learn how to map. And as far as helping to build out the map, one of the gaps we had identified a long time ago was we don't have a lot in the way of businesses because there hasn't been a concerted push to add businesses to the map, at least in our neck of the woods. So when the pandemic struck, the county here essentially ordered any business that wanted to reopen to let the county know and declare that they were reopening in a safe way. So basically, the county did the hardest part for us, which was putting together a comprehensive business directory of every kind of business imaginable. And this went on from last July to just last week. So this database consists of these forms, these PDFs that business owners are also required to post physically in their storefronts. Unfortunately, this is the only form we got the data in. It's not actually a database. And so we had to do a bit of scraping and geocoding ourselves. But we wound up being able to create this. So Map Roulette is a kind of platform where people can organize what they're doing with OpenStreetMap in terms of editing. And we put together a series of challenges, one per business category. And as you can see here, we're not terribly complete yet. We're still in the, I think, 15% range. But what we've been able to do is set it up so that anybody who wants to, and they don't have to be locals to the South Bay, to the San Jose area, they can be from anywhere in the world. They can go here, click start to go at random to any of the businesses that have filed to reopen. And this comes with all kinds of information. Most interesting thing is the address and the name, the type of business. And this is really convenient because otherwise we'd have to go around driving everywhere, and it would just be prohibitive to try to survey the county comprehensively. So with that information, I can go in here then and say, well, this is a US bank. Go. I can add the address. Right. Yep. And I can even say this is the US bank. If I wasn't sure this is the right building, I could open up street level imagery and I can verify that real quick. And so this is really convenient for people who are just learning how to map. They have everything at their fingertips already. And here I've just contributed something to the map. It's that simple. And I'm just gonna mark that I fixed it so nobody else tries to fix it also. And so it's a very simple workflow, relatively speaking, compared to what most people have to do in terms of imports. We've been able to onboard a number of people who, a lot of them hadn't been mapping before, and they're learning how, and they're locals or not locals, but it kind of benefits both the local community and OpenStreetMap. I know I'm running a bit long, but I just wanted to show one more thing. So this is OpenStreetMap coverage of Santa Clara County. And this is what we had before. I'm, well, kind of hide the base map here so you can see. This is a map of the census tracts of the county. And we had some areas of concentration. This is basically all the data we had before our POI mapping project here at COFA San Jose. It had all been added organically over the years, over a decade. And there's some clusters around downtown San Jose, around Stanford, around Google's headquarters. But there's also quite a few very dense parts of the county that have almost nothing. And these happen to be areas that are relatively low income or predominantly minorities. And so this is an aspect of the map that we wanted to improve. Like OpenStreetMap is only as useful as its coverage. And we didn't want it to be kind of perpetuating any kind of biases in other aspects of technology. So this POI import leaning on government data helps us to balance things out a bit. We're only 15% of the way through, but you can kind of see from the rings, the darker rings here, that we've started to build out coverage in more parts of the county. Especially in some of these areas here that are more heavily, I think these are Asian neighborhoods. I did zoom in earlier to these heavily Hispanic neighborhoods. We're still working on that. But ultimately, there will be, so the red outlines are what we would be getting from this project once it's done. And you'll see there are places that will get a lot more data. And just really though, I mean, even just this tiny little bit of data we get in this one census tract makes a bit of difference, right? Because it's kind of starting from zero. So we're hopeful that that this project will help to balance out the map. In that way, it'll make it easier for us to evangelize OpenStreetMap to locals in the community, because it'll be a better reflection of the community already. And hopefully there'll be a bit of a virtuous cycle that way. So that's my spiel. Also, I want to point out that the kind of thing we're doing here is not necessarily unique to the South Bay. Although the data set we're working off of is, exists due to the pandemic, there are similar data sets anywhere in the country. Health inspection reports for restaurants, things like that. It just needs someone to spend time on it.
It's really good work. That's a very cool project. I like that. Questions about that project or comments or anything? I worked on a project years ago at a previous job with some folks that were doing they were doing like a POI database and using it to.
Apologies, my internet is really bad right now. I can't hear if anyone's speaking.
Oh, can other people hear me? Hopefully, okay. Yeah, we were looking at like POI databases to map food deserts in Boston, which was, I don't know. I think a lot of times in a city, if you live there and you understand the dynamic of the city, you see a map of like something that might show racial or income disparity and say like, yep, that's exactly what we all know is like how this place works. But it is, sometimes it is nice to have some evidence that you can like print out on a paper and shake at your city councilor or something. Does anybody else have a project or an update that they want to share? I know there's some interesting, mapping is maybe not exactly the right word, but there's some interesting geospatial stuff at Code for Anchorage with the like land, the land acknowledgement. TechSpot certainly is a place-based based project. Solomon, I don't know if you have worked directly on that project or not, but would love to hear about it if you have.
Sure, I worked on a bit on it last August before I went back up to school. I don't have much to share on that. I guess I can share the website link, but Code for Anchorage has taken what has come from like the nativelands.ca website and made it into a texting bot. And it's kind of interesting to see like a project like that go viral last August. And I think a couple of our team members presented maybe a couple months ago on it. And it was pretty interesting to see because like the wide use case of it, but also just kind of shaping data into a different format. And I think that there's a recording previously, but I don't have any updates on the project.
Yeah, Brendan Babb presented about that a couple months ago. But yeah, if folks aren't familiar with that project, you text your address or your zip code to a phone number and it'll respond and tell you what native lands you're on. And it's interesting. It was, as Solomon said, it was a project that like went pretty viral. I think at one point it was getting like a couple 100,000 hits a minute or something like that. It was, it blew up, and like it was the kind of thing that I saw reference to it multiple times, like on social media through like accounts that had absolutely nothing to do with Code for America. Just like it was it was making the rounds. So that was very cool to see.
I could share something sort of related to what you were saying with getting some insight, Will, into maybe like you hear that there's certain demographic relationships going on, but you're not sure and you want to be able to shake something in somebody's face. In Vermont, for Open Data Day, we were exploring how new Americans were supported by the open data supported by the state, or I guess provided by the state, and whether there was a gap. We had heard that maybe it wasn't very good, and we wanted to explore it a bit. So one of the outcomes was contacting the Green Mountain Transit Authority, which is basically the primary public bus system in Vermont. You know, we don't have a whole lot of public transit, but we have that, and getting their bus stop information. And I will share my screen, I guess, this thing. So we got all of their bus stop locations and put them on the map. And what I did next, because we can, like if you take each bus stop, they didn't have a whole lot of information per bus stop. They were interested in the demographics themselves. They didn't know like how many BIPOC citizens might live near a bus stop, for example, or like how many new Americans, that kind of thing. But they had all the locations. So I did a 15-minute walk buffer around each bus stop in the state. So that's, I mean, we don't have a huge number of bus stops in the state, but certainly around Burlington, there's a bunch. And within each of those, I was then able to enrich it with the American Community Survey data to add in a whole bunch of additional attributes so that we can now look and see what if you're looking at disabilities nearby in the 15-minute buffer, or percentage of population aged 18 to 64 who speak Spanish and no English. And there's racial stuff, there's sex as well, and some crime, and you know, so it kind of crosses diversity and as well as some justice questions. And we're able to take that and add it in to all of these bus stops and give that back to Green Mountain Transit Authority so that they can use that information, and then kind of colored them in this case by well, I don't even remember what I colored them by at the moment. Minority population was the American Community Survey metric that I colored them by. So if they had more green, then there was a larger minority population living within a 15-minute walk of that bus stop. And as this is Vermont, most of the bus stops are not green. That's, again, working in reality, but it was a fun little exercise to add in all that information to those bus stops and kind of create a new data set that we can use to support some changes in public transit access.
That's an interesting project, Nick. I don't know, it, like, from a city context, it is interesting to see like such a geographically spread out transit agency. But yeah, I mean, it's a good, like, I mean, I love stuff that like maps ACS data, so that's always fun. Yeah, Alex, thanks for mentioning that. We should reach out and yeah, see what we can do with Twilio.
Yeah, he's been there a little while now too. Yeah, Charlie Weems was a fellow, I think 2016, and now he's at Twilio. So if cost is an issue, it could be worth, they might be able to hook you guys up.
I think they did reach out last August, and I don't know if they're transitioning away from the text bot. But Yeah.
Yeah, we can check in with Brendan or any of the people who are like more actively leading that project now. I'm sure that they would have like more insight into what is needed. Cool. Well, thank you all for joining us. I don't mean to cut off the conversation. I think that probably everyone who is going to present has. So we can continue chatting about maps if we would like. Technically, we are scheduled until 8:30, but we certainly we schedule these for an hour and a half because we almost always run late if we schedule them for an hour. So, but yeah, does anyone have map questions for our Mapbox friends or anyone else?
I can share a different anecdote if people have nothing else to bring up. In exploring the open data for New Americans, I ran across the state's provided open data set for trails in Vermont. And I thought, well, this is cool. I'm just going to throw this on a map and share it with the community. And I learned that landowners get really pissy about this kind of stuff, that I did not expect this. And so I put up this map and it's like, look, there's all these cool trails around here, and you know, you can go walk your dog on these trails, or it's all public stuff. And I'm getting all these angry emails from people saying like, no, that's private property. You can't, you've got to take this map down right now. And I'm like, it's public data. Like, I didn't like get it. I didn't like go out and collect it myself. Like, it's from the state that says there's a trail on your property. So that morphed into me then modifying that map to include sort of opt-in private, you know, I added all the parcels on top of that and then started blocking out the trails that were crossing over people that had posted their land so that you couldn't press pass. And I think that it's one of those things where you sometimes think like if the open data is open, it should just be like everybody can use it and work with it, and that it will be happy-go-lucky. I don't know, but then people don't realize that there's data that's open. They don't realize that the parcel data with their name attached to it is open data, and that they don't like that being on the internet as well. So yeah, as a brigade, you know, think carefully about what you're attaching your name to and what you're putting out there, so that you may not tarnish your brigade's reputation by pissing off your neighbors with something that isn't really worth pissing them off over.
It's a good lesson. As I may have mentioned earlier in the call, I live in Boston now, but as a person who is into like being outdoors and hiking and stuff, and grew up in Colorado, where there's lots of publicly owned land, the concentration of private property that you have to navigate if you want to do anything outside of New England is just mind-boggling.
Have you tried the All Trails app?
Yeah, people have recommended that. And what's interesting is that, I mean, All Trails may show trails that's not officially sanctioned by the state or maintained by the state. So I think that some people initially were aggressive towards me because they assumed that I was getting these trails from you know, community sourced trail information, when in fact I was not. And so it's kind of interesting, because yeah, some landowners who were maybe not totally aggressive also were like, we need to think about how we can stop people from just mapping any old trail anywhere. And I'm not sure I agree with that, but you know, people are really concerned about that. Some people want to keep you off their land for privacy reasons. They are private people. They're whatever. They just don't like people that's fine. They can do that. They're legally entitled. I was contacted by a few who had their land open, but they found that the trail that crossed their land led to damage to their forest or whatever they were trying to protect. They had like a forest management plan that was being thrown out the window because they couldn't stop people from crossing through certain areas and wrecking it. And yeah, I heard a couple of those. So, you know, there's probably different reasons why people shouldn't be using any old trail to get onto land, but I don't know, it's just a learning experience.
Yeah, I think that like balance of being, because like some brigade projects you end up like needing to be aggressive towards, I mean, hopefully not just towards like your neighbors, but like towards a government that won't open up data or cooperate or something. And sometimes there are relationships that you have an interest in preserving. Well, again, thank you all for joining. We can start to wrap up here, and I'll post the notes and then the recording of this to I'll post them to Slack just in a response to the message there, and then we have there's a post on Discourse that has captured all of the like previous recordings of these sessions. This is the last one of these stand-ups for a little while, just because we have our capacity is way down on the network team. So hopefully once we're able to staff back up, we will be able to pick these up again in the fall or something like that. But yeah, thanks all for joining. This was a lot of fun.
And thanks for having me, everyone. It's nice to meet you all and get to talk about maps for a little while and hear about your projects.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.